All right, we're getting ready to connect here, Jen.
All right.
Oh no, let's try it again. That didn't work.
Oh, it says it's live.
Let's check.
Oh, it says it's live.
Yep, we are live. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, and I apologize for that weird technical thing that just happened here. Yep.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, so Jen, thank you so much for being here. For folks tuning in, my name is Andrew McGinley. I'm the VP of External Affairs here at the Committee of 70, and I am joined by my friend and colleague, Jennifer Coatsworth, the Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association. So Jen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrew. It's my honor to be here.
We really appreciate it. Happy primary election day to you. And we're really happy to have you here to talk a little bit about the Attorney General's race, some things that the public should be thinking about as they are making their choices today. And so thanks so much for joining us. And I guess if we can
having me.
hop right into it. Can you talk to us a little bit about the significance of the Office of the Attorney General? What do they do in terms of how do they affect the public? What are they doing to, uphold the rule of law and ensure justice across the Commonwealth? Do you mind hopping into that?
Sure. So the Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer, which is obviously a critical role in preserving the rule of law and in ensuring justice. And specifically, the Office of Attorney General prosecutes criminals in cases that are related to drug trafficking, child predators, organized crime, public corruption. They play another role as well. They protect the public by handling cases that are related to civil rights enforcement and consumer complaints and antitrust actions. And that's not all they do, because they also defend the constitutionality of our laws in cases such as tax appeals and in vote by mail law. And finally, the Attorney General's office engages with the public, doing outreach to let people know how they can be protected by the laws of the Commonwealth, and doing things like teaching seniors how they can avoid being victims of scams, and letting voters know how they can get information to know their rights. So those are just some of the most critical examples of how the Attorney General's office serves the people of the Commonwealth, and why we believe that this position is so important. It's so important in our governance.
Fantastic. Thank you. So obviously a big issue that's been talked a lot about in this race in the primary, and will probably continue into the fall when it comes to the Office of the Attorney General, is public safety. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the Attorney General specifically in that area of public safety, what they can do, what they are really able to do for the state?
Sure. So in addition to some of the areas that I just outlined, the Office of Attorney General also works to protect the public from the scourge of gun violence. And this is an issue which the Bar Association is particularly interested, given our strong stance on preventing gun violence in some of our previous positions. Specifically, the Philadelphia Bar Association supported efforts to curb possession of handguns by minors, and supported the extension of the federal ban on semi-automatic weapons, assault weapons, in a resolution that was adopted by our Board of Governors back in June of 2004. And then thereafter, by a further resolution that was passed more recently on September 29th of 2022, our Board of Governors supported federal and state legislation consistent with the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution that would establish safe storage requirements. It would create extreme risk protection orders, ban assault weapons, require a background check for every firearm sale, mandate the reporting of lost or stolen firearms, and authorize local communities to enact life-saving gun policies. So because of that position that our bar association has consistently held for more than 2 decades, we are ready to work alongside the next Attorney General to continue that office's good work to bring an end to this epidemic.
It's fantastic. It's such an important issue across Pennsylvania, especially here in Philadelphia, where I am physically located today and live. So one of the big things that we've been seeing a lot, really in the last since the last presidential election, there's been a ton of litigation about voting rights and access to vote. And since there were changes to voting laws in Pennsylvania back in 2019, allowing the mail-in ballots. So do you think you could talk a little bit about what role the AG has when it comes to, making sure that people have access to vote? What is their role in ensuring that elections are fair and secure? And what do you know of, any specific like initiatives that are being undertaken to really protect the right to vote of all Pennsylvanians?
Sure. So the AG has done a huge service to the public by making sure that they know their rights. And there's a voters' rights information sheet that's on the Attorney General's website, which is a fantastic resource for all voters. And I encourage anyone watching to take a look at that resource guide. So a few things that particularly stand out from that guide are the work that the office has done in the areas of voter ID and voter intimidation.
Yeah.
In particular, the Office of the Attorney General has done work to ensure that proper identification only needs to be shown the first time a voter is casting their ballot at a particular polling place. And the office worked hard to ensure that a broad range of forms of identification are accepted so that access to the ballot box is not restricted to those who are traditionally disenfranchised. Additionally, the Attorney General has done a fair amount of work to prevent voter intimidation and to ensure that those who engage in these unlawful acts are duly prosecuted, because voter intimidation is, in fact, prohibited by law and subject to prosecution for anyone who is caught engaging in that activity. So the Bar Association, again, stands poised to work alongside the Attorney General's office in those efforts. As you know, Andrew, on May 1st.
Just going to say, you want to talk about Law Day?
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with this. So on May 1st, which is Law Day, the Bar Association, alongside our partner, the Pepper Center, which is a foundation that stems from a law firm here in Philadelphia, as well as with the Committee of 70 and another organization called Keeping Our Republic, is kicking off our efforts to work on expanding access to the ballot in all 67 counties of the Commonwealth. And actually, I'm sorry, I did leave out that in addition to the Philadelphia Bar Association, we are also working with our statewide partners in the Pennsylvania Bar Association. And the Law Day program is, in fact, part of a wider task force and initiative of the American Bar Association to ensure free and fair elections across the country. So the work that we're going to be doing here in Pennsylvania with those organizations partnering is that we're going to identify lawyers who can work as poll watchers and perform voter protection services to ensure that anyone who is eligible to vote does not face barriers to casting their legal ballots. So lawyers play a key role in that whole scheme, both working as election workers as well as poll watchers and doing that voter election protection work. And bringing cases to court as needed, but to uphold the rule of law. And I know the Attorney General's office plays a key and critical role in those efforts. And so the bar associations are here to stand with the Attorney General's office and our other partners to do that work and ensure that we can have free and fair elections.
Yeah, I'm excited to be there on Law Day, kick that initiative off, and then we can really work together, make sure that everyone who's eligible to vote has, the access to the ballot this fall and into the future. And I think it's a great it's a great coalition of folks who really care about these things. And I know the AG's office will play an important role in it. So I look forward to really working with you, continuing to work with you on that initiative. So one of the things, I'd love to talk a little bit about is upholding justice and protecting rights. So this is an issue that, we see debated and litigated across the country. What does the Attorney General do when it comes to protecting the rights of Pennsylvanians and upholding justice for all Pennsylvania residents?
So it's important to remember the Office of the Attorney General played a really critical role in a number of our previous elections, and I have no doubt that they will continue to do so in this cycle as well. Specifically, the Attorney General worked tirelessly to combat a number of baseless claims that challenged the voting rights of the citizens of Pennsylvania. In one particularly egregious example, the state of Texas challenged ballots in Pennsylvania. And when that occurred, then Pennsylvania Attorney General, now Governor Josh Shapiro, along with the Wisconsin Attorney General, Josh Cowell, and the Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, issued a joint statement regarding Texas's efforts to discredit the 2020 election results in federal court. And they said that people within our states have voted, their votes were counted, and there were multiple recounts, and the results were certified. And it's well past time for the then president and their fellow states and elected officials to stop misleading the public about the year's election and to acknowledge the results certified in their states, in those 3 states, and reflect the decisions that were made by our voters in free, fair, and secure election. So, and they followed that statement by working to defeat the unsubstantiated challenges that were waged by many outside of Pennsylvania in the courts and beyond. So that was really an important and key role that the Attorney General's office played in the past couple of election cycles. And they also consistently mounted a vigorous defense at both the state and federal level of the citizens' right to vote by mail with universal mail-in voting. The Attorney General was an important voice, particularly at the time in 2020 when mail-in voting was becoming particularly important in light of the COVID pandemic. And the Attorney General's office ensured that the Pennsylvania's presidential election results upheld the challenges, particularly as it pertained to mail-in ballots. In fact, the Attorney General's office at that time in 2020 obtained a ruling from the United States Supreme Court that upheld Pennsylvania's voting laws, despite the repeated attacks. And so the highest court in the land held that Pennsylvanians can continue to use drop boxes, and ballots that are postmarked by election day will have extra time to arrive at election offices. And consistent with that rule, the Philadelphia election commissioners opened satellite offices for voter services to make access to the ballot boxes easier for the citizens of Philadelphia. And Andrew, I know that you know that because your office is particularly involved in that as well. And the Philadelphia Bar Association was proud to stand alongside Chairman Severe, a number of members of the City Council, as well as Lauren Cristello with Committee of 70, when that announcement for that first satellite office was open. And these accommodations were possible due to the work of the Attorney General. So the Philadelphia Bar Association remains steadfast in our efforts to continue that work and to continue making access to the ballot box available for the citizens of Philadelphia and for citizens across our state and our Commonwealth.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, those offices Jen's referring to, they've opened the first satellite election office, and by the general election, there will be a permanent satellite election office in each council district in Philadelphia. So there will be 10 district satellite election offices in Philadelphia where voters can go and apply for a mail-in ballot, fill it out right there, and drop it off in a drop box, and all of the other important voter services, really bringing those services right into the community. So we're incredibly excited to see that fully come to fruition. It was a huge lift to do those temporary ones in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic and the new mail-in ballot. And we're glad to see that moving forward, those will likely be permanent here in Philadelphia. It's such an important way to bring voting right to our communities across Philadelphia. So I'd like to transition a little bit, if you have a couple minutes,
Sure.
and talk about specifically the Philadelphia Bar Association and the work that you do when it comes to judicial elections. I know this is not a judicial election year here in Philadelphia, but can you tell folks about the Judicial Commission, what it does, and sort of what role it plays here in Philadelphia?
Sure. So because we elect our judges in Pennsylvania, a lot of people who are going to the voting boxes to elect judges have never had any contact with the judges, don't know anything about the candidates. And the judicial elections, while the statewide offices certainly get a lot more publicity and press, and there's often a lot more out there in the public sphere about the statewide judicial offices, oftentimes in Philadelphia, that's not known as much, and the candidates aren't known as well to our citizens in Philadelphia. So the Philadelphia, and I should mention that the Pennsylvania Bar Association also vets the statewide candidates and provides similar services for the statewide candidates. But the Philadelphia Bar Association has made it our mission over the course of decades to try to ensure that our judges in Philadelphia have the sufficient credentials to do the work of dispensing justice to our citizens. And so we undertake a very rigorous process of vetting the judicial candidates. And Andrew, you know this because while you were with us, you worked very closely hand in hand with our Judicial Commission on the work that we do. And so you know firsthand the countless amount of hours and work that goes into this vetting process, hundreds of hours to vet the candidates that stand for election for the Philadelphia courts. There is an investigative team that reviews the materials that are submitted by the candidates. They also interview at least 20 references, both those references submitted by the candidate as well as potential contacts that the candidate does not submit, to try to get a full picture of that candidate's background and the work that they've done in the legal sphere before being elected to serve as a judge and to dispense justice to the citizens of Philadelphia. After those investigative teams conduct their investigation, they also, I should mention, do work looking at dockets and doing internet research and social media research to try to find out as much information about each of the candidates as they can. They then prepare a report that is given to the Judicial Commission, who reviews that report as well as writing samples of the candidate. And the commission, which is comprised of about 36 or so, both lawyers and lay members who conduct their own interview with the candidate. The investigative teams conduct an interview, but our Judicial Commission conducts its own interview of the candidate, reviews all of the materials submitted by the investigative team, and then makes a determination as to whether or not we should recommend, highly recommend, or not recommend a particular candidate for the judicial office. And I'm very proud to say that in the past 3 elections, judicial election cycles, only candidates that received either recommended or highly recommended ratings from our Bar Association have been elected during the primaries in our judicial cycle. So we're very proud of that record. We know that we have a voice and that we're making it heard, and that by doing this work, we are ensuring that our judges who are elected have sufficient qualifications and expertise to dispense justice to our citizens.
I mean, I just have to say thank you for all the work that you do for the Judicial Commission. I mean, that is such a useful resource for all Philadelphians. Something I relied on long before I was involved with the Philly Bar or Committee of 70 as a voter here in Philadelphia, to really know, okay, are these people ready for prime time here? And it's such a useful tool. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do on that front. And I guess my last question here today, is there anything we didn't talk about today that you want our viewers to know? Is there anything we need to cover?
So no, I mean, I think we covered it. The attorney, I just want to sort of stress that it's so important to get out and vote. If you don't get out and vote, then you can't complain about what's going on. And, I don't think you can talk to anybody out there in the public who doesn't have some complaint about something that's going on in some aspect of the government. And if you don't get out and vote, then that's your real way to make your voice heard. So I encourage everyone to get out and vote, to do the research and to look into all the kits and to make sure that you know who you're voting for and why you're casting the votes that you cast.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone, even if you are an unaffiliated voter, you're not registered with either of the major parties, there could be ballot questions on your ballot today that would allow you to vote in your primary. So make sure you do that research. If you're in Philadelphia, there's one ballot question on the ballot today. So check that out and make sure you get on there and vote, regardless of your political affiliations. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jen, for joining us. It's great to see you. And I hope you have a
You
great
too.
rest of your election day.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Andrew, for all the work that Committee 70 does. It's an amazing resource, and thanks to you, and great to see you as well.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care.